Crime and deviance, conflict and functionalist theories. In sociology, there are various theories that consider crime and deviance. This essay examines these phenomena within the framework of conflict and functionalist theory. Conflict theory emphasizes that crime is the result of a conflict of interest between classes. Functionalist theory focuses on the constructive role of deviance in social cohesion. The aspect that is characteristic of both theories is that they point out that crime and deviance are an integral part of society, as well as socially conditioned. However, these paradigms assess the role of these elements in the life and transformation of society in different ways. The causes of crime and deviance are one of the most controversial subjects in the field of sociology. There are various perspectives that consider the nature of the emergence of crime and its impact on society. Conflict theory states that deviance is the result of a conflict of interests between different social groups due to uneven distribution of resources, which leads to violence as an attempt to change the social structure. Functionalist theory does not emphasize the causes of crimes but suggests that this phenomenon plays an integral role in strengthening the social order as a reaction to the violation of moral boundaries. Although these theories have different foundations and focus, they both agree that crime and deviance are the norms of society. Sociological theories considering such a phenomenon as crime have evolved for a long time. Conflict theories view crime and deviant behavior as the result of confrontation between social classes. These theories were based on Marx's ideas about the significant differences between classes within capitalist society. According to the theorists of this direction, despite the interaction of groups within society, a conflict of interests inevitably arises between them, which are the result of an unequal distribution of resources. Crime is thus the product of this conflict of interest, which leads to violence as a means of redistributing resources within society. More recent sociologists have seen conflict as a necessity to maintain a balance of power within society. Thus, against the background of constant conflict in society, groups that have greater power stand out. Thus, society is constantly polarized into dominant and subjugated groups. The aggravation of the conflict between these groups inevitably leads to a change in the social order and the transformation of society. Within the framework of this paradigm, modern sociologists who support the theory of conflict consider crime as a social status that is imposed by representatives of the dominant group on members of lower classes. Thus, conflict is seen as a permanent state of the relationship between authority and subject. Laws, in turn, are created by representatives of the ruling group to protect their interests and rights. Called to support the ruling elite, these rules marginalize the interests of non-dominant groups. Thus, the actions that subjugated communities take to protect their own interests are seen as deviant. Conflict theory views crime and deviance as an integral part of society and social order. The functionalist theory of crime and Levianism also supports this perspective. However, the supporters of functionalism emphasize the constructive role of crime, which serves certain social functions. Functionalists argue that crime or the reaction to it, punishment, brings people together, thereby building social solidarity and cohesiveness, which in turn decreases crime. The reaction of society to deviant behavior in the form of punishments for certain crimes strengthens the characteristics of society and builds its moral boundaries. On a more individual level, this process allows for building bonds within communities. In particular, when members of a community are met with violations of the moral standards they respect, then public disapproval arises. People gather to discuss this episode and take measures to punish the violator. This process allows to strengthen bonds between members of the community based on common moral values. Thus, from the point of view of the functionalist theory, crime and deviance act as regulators of social order. On the one hand, they help society to realize their own moral boundaries. On the other hand, the reaction to the crime allows members of the community to effectively build a structure for punishing offenders. This process, in turn, leads to the development of fear of crime, which results in a decrease in their number. The higher the level of awareness of moral boundaries in a society, the more developed institutions of punishment exist in it. This aspect leads to a limitation of the number of crimes and manifestations of deviant behavior due to a variety of punishment tools. Both conflict and functionalist theory emphasize that crime is an integral part of the social structure. Additionally, both paradigms assume that crime and deviance inevitably lead to the transformation of the social order. Both paradigms view crime and deviance as socially determined characteristics rather than features of human development. However, conflict theory considers this process in a more radical way, arguing that crime and violence are a means for redistributing resources and changing the dominant group. Functionalists view crime from a more constructive perspective, noting that social cohesion is a response to the violation of accepted moral norms.